All right. Well, once again, everybody, my name is Stephanie Adams. I am one of the instructional designers in the Department of Cyber Learning here at Youngstown State. I do see some familiar names, so I'm sure you've worked with our department before or somebody in our department. Today, we're going to be talking about Blackboard Ultra. More specifically, we're going to be talking about creating tests. Now, our office here at YSU is the main support for Blackboard on our campus. In addition to helping all of our faculty and staff design and develop their courses in an online manner. So again, for today's purpose, we're just going to be talking about creating tests in Ultra. Now, before we actually jump into our webinar, a couple housekeeping items. If you've joined some of our other sessions this week so far, you're probably familiar with what I'm going to say. But I do have our chat window open. So if you do have any questions or comments or anything you want to talk about, you can go ahead over to that chat window. I do have it open on one of my monitors here. Or you can go ahead and just hop off mic and verbally ask your question. I am going to pause periodically and give you time to ask those questions, but feel free to jump in at any time as well. I am recording the session, and by the end of today, you will receive a link to the recording, as well as some links to instructional documentation on the features that we talk about. So you'll have it in video format, and you'll also have it in documentation format as well. I think that is it. So let's go ahead and jump into our training objectives for today. This is what we're going to cover. So by the end of our session, I want you to feel comfortable creating a test with a variety of question types, adjusting the test settings. Then we're going to switch gears and we're going to jump into a student mode, and we're actually going to take the test from a student perspective. So you can see what that process looks like, and of course, let your students know a little bit about that process. And then we'll switch back to our instructor side and we will grade the test. So keep in mind, today's training is really just to get you up and running with the basics of creating a test in Blackboard. I'm going to sprinkle in some best practices here and there, but I really want you to think of this as a process. I want you to kind of take the basics that we talk about today, implement those, and then once you're ready to go into some more advanced features or advanced functionality of tests and implementing those tests into your course, we can go ahead and talk about those. So before we get started, just going to pause here. Any questions with our training objectives for today? Or anything you wanted to make sure you saw today regarding tests that you don't see here on the screen? All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our first training objective, and that's going to be, let's just create a test. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Blackboard here. Over on the left-hand side, I'm going to access my courses page and locate my course that I want to build my test in. So the nice thing that I like about Ultra is that you can choose where you want to insert your item. So I can choose to create my test here directly on the main content page. I can choose to open up this module and create my test in here. So wherever you want to build your test, go ahead and locate that purple plus sign and choose Create. That panel is going to open up on the right-hand side. And in that middle section under Assessment, we're going to go ahead and choose Test. And we're going to go ahead and name the test something meaningful for our students so they know what this is. Try to align it with what you have listed in your syllabus or your course schedule. In the upper right corner, we're going to go ahead and adjust the visibility for our students. So do we want to make this visible right away? Do we want to keep it hidden for now? Or we can choose release conditions and choose a specific date and time for it to show to our students. For today's training, I'm just going to go ahead and choose visible. Now we're ready to begin building our test. In the center of the screen, I'm going to go ahead and choose that purple plus sign. And you're going to see a very large menu appear. Now there are a lot of different question types, and towards the bottom some additional options. We're just going to stick with the basics today. I'm going to show you how to build the most commonly used question types. So for today's purpose, we're going to start with adding a multiple choice question. Now from here, we're just going to kind of go through what the screen is telling me to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is enter in my question text. You'll notice when I go to enter in my question text, I have this editor toolbar that appears. You're going to see this editor toolbar throughout Ultra. For today, we're just going to keep it simple. Down below, we're going to go ahead and enter in our answer options. And I'm going to go ahead and add a fourth option here. So I'm going to have A through D. I'm going to choose my correct answer by putting a check in the box next to that correct answer. And then the last piece I like to do is set my point value. By default, all questions will be built with 1 as the point value. But of course, if this doesn't align with your assessment, you can go ahead and change that. The last thing you'll want to do when building your question is select Save in the lower right corner. So real quick, we're just going to recap those steps. So to begin building a test, you're going to locate where you want to insert the test. Choose that purple plus sign, select Create. From the panel on the right-hand side, choose Test. Go ahead and name your test. In the upper right corner, choose your visibility settings. And then directly in the center of the screen, we can begin building our test by choosing that purple plus sign and choosing a question type. We selected multiple choice. We typed out our question. We typed in our answer options. I can add some additional answer options or delete them if I would just only want 2, let's say. Put a check in the box next to your correct answer. Upper right corner of the question, you'll go ahead and adjust the points if you need to. And then finally select Save in the lower right corner. We are going to take this several steps further, but before I do that, any questions so far on just building a test and adding some questions? This is the easy part. So let's take this a couple steps further. So I'm going to go ahead and below question 1, I'm going to add another question. So I'm going to select that purple plus sign. And this time I'm just going to do a true and false option. So again, from that menu, I'm going to choose Add True False Question. Not too different than that multiple choice question. It just saves me a little bit of time here where I don't have to type out true as an answer and false as an answer. We'll go ahead and keep that 1 point value for this question and then choose Save. I'm going to go ahead and now add an essay question, but I decided that I don't want my essay question to come third. I meant to have it be my first question. So I'm going to go ahead and actually above question 1, click the purple plus sign. So again, anywhere in Ultra, you're always looking for that purple plus sign for where you want to add your content, or in this case, your questions. So from that menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose Add Essay Question. This is just going to give you an editor toolbar. There's not going to be really any additional steps that you have to do. And I'm just going to say something like this. And then choose, let's go ahead and adjust that point value actually. And then choose Save. Folks, any questions with multiple choice, true, false, or an essay question? All right, let's take this another step further. So I'm going to go ahead and add another question. This time I'm going to select that purple plus sign, and instead of choosing a question from my list or question type from my list, I'm going to go to the very top of my list and select Auto Generate Question. This is going to open up our AI Design Assistant. So this is a feature built in Blackboard, and it's going to help us create or generate questions based off of the content in our course. So over on the left-hand side, the first thing I'm going to do is choose Select Course Items. I'm going to go ahead into the course I'm in right now, and I'm going to go ahead and actually choose some content items. So I have this module overview, I have this piece of content. I think in there I have a video and a PDF document my students had to read. I'm going to go ahead and choose select. I can choose the question types I want the platform to provide me with. So I can choose just matching, just multiple choice, or a variety. I can choose the complexity of the question here and how many questions I want it to provide me. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just bump that up to 6. Then I'm going to select generate. So what's happening here is the platform is actually going out to those content items that I selected. It's analyzing those, reading those, and what it's going to do is provide me now with questions auto-generated using AI technology, auto-generate questions that I can include into my assessment. So, of course, even though they're generated through AI and they are built here for me, we always don't want to have some human interaction with AI generated content. So I'm going to select a few of these and add them to my assessment. But the great thing is I don't have to, there we go. I was like, where did they go? The great thing is I can edit these. So I don't have to take the exact wording of any of them. I can go ahead and add my own information or just adjust the content a little bit. But that is a really effective and efficient way to have the platform kind of auto-generate some questions based off of the content. And all we did was select that purple plus sign. Instead of choosing a specific question type, I went to the very top and selected auto-generate. Folks, any questions with the AI design assistant and how it generates those questions for us? All right. So we have created a test. Let's talk about all the different settings that we can adjust to really customize this assessment for our students. So I'm in my course here. I'm going to go ahead and access my midterm. And over on the right-hand side, we're going to see our test settings. To access all of the settings, we're going to select the options gear. Now, folks, there are a lot of settings in here. You can see that I can keep scrolling for some time. We are not going to cover these all today. That would be doing quite a disservice to you. We're going to cover the most popular settings that we see used within TESS and Ultra. So in the very first section, I do like to point out the due date. Of course, if we have a due date associated with our test, students will see that due date on their content page in their Blackboard calendar. And if we also have a due date, we have access to some additional features, such as prohibiting any late submissions or prohibiting students from starting the test after the due date. Scrolling down to the next section, presentation options. So this is going to be the settings for how do you want your questions and your assessments to display to your students? Do you want one question to display at a time or all at once? Do you want to randomize your questions and your answer choices? So a lot of options in terms of how we want this to look and be presented to our students. In the grading and submission section, I like to point out the number of attempts allowed. So if you are using this test as a true formative assessment tool, maybe you want to provide them with multiple attempts so they can practice the material, see what they got wrong, try again. And I always like to point out the maximum points. We, of course, cannot change the maximum points here. That's going to be calculated based off of all the questions that we inserted. If we scroll down to assessment or results, this is an important section. So all the settings within the section are going to be how do you want your students to receive and view their feedback, scores, and their answers to the submission. The nice thing is that you can choose when you want them to see that information. Do you want them to see immediately after they submitted? Do you want them to see after the due date? Or do you want them to see their grades after a specific date? So there's a lot of different options here that can really be customized for how you want your students to see results, scores, and points after the test is over. And then the last option I like to point out is a time limit. A lot of professors like to add a time limit to their quizzes and tests, and you can go ahead and add that time limit here. Once you've made adjustments to any of these test settings, you'll just select Save in the lower right corner, brings you right back to that main test interface. You can come back to your test settings anytime, click that Options gear. That panel is going to open up. You can make any of those adjustments. Folks, there are a lot of test settings in here. I want to pause and see if there's any questions with any of the settings that I covered. Or are there any questions about a specific setting that you want to use for your assessment that I can go ahead and show and expand a little bit on?
Hi, Stephanie. I have a question. Is there a way to import a test that's already constructed in like Word or a Google Doc where you can just upload the entire test and then edit it from that submission?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there is an import process for a Word document into Blackboard. The process is pretty step intensive, so typically we offer to do that for you. So if you do have your content, your test, your questions built out in a Word document, and the correct answer indicated with highlight, asterisk, whatever the case is, we can go ahead and import that for you. So we use a test generator website that formats this and the exact format needed to be able to quickly import it into Blackboard. We did have another question come through about question banks. So the question in the chat is, I have 100 questions. I want to randomly select 50 questions. Each test would be different for each student. How is that done? It's a great question. So in terms of pulling 50 questions out of a bank of 100, instead of building your test first, you'll want to first build a question bank. So over on the left-hand side is where you build your question banks. Oh, and I do have some in here actually. So we can build a question bank from scratch and begin adding questions. Or as I mentioned, we offer that service of importing all of the questions for you. So we can create the question bank for you and import all 100 of your questions within probably less than 10 minutes. So once we have our question bank created, we will go back to building our test. From that purple plus sign, instead of choosing a question type, we're going to choose the second option, which is going to be to add a question pool. This is going to basically open up all of those question banks that we've created for you. Over on the left-hand side, you'll choose the question bank that you want to pull from. We're just going to choose all of them, all 10. And then this is the step where we're going to tell the platform, okay, there's 10 questions in this pool. I want to display 5 questions to my students, and then select save. So now this test is created using that question pool of 10 questions, but we are only going to show 5 to our students, and it will randomly, you can see it's going to randomly pull 5 from that pool of 10.
When you have, because I mean, I really wanted to figure out how to use that test bank too. So
Yeah.
this is helpful, but how do I, if a student wants to come in, like what we have often is a student accidentally X's out of the exam too soon, and I have to reset or I have to get them back in. What I'd like to do is just say, okay, go ahead back in, but ensure they get a different topic because we have essay exams. Can you make sure that they don't see the same question?
That's a good question. I would assume if you set it up as a question pool like this, I
Mhm.
would assume if they went in again, they would be given a different 5 questions because it technically would be a new attempt. But I
Okay,
don't want to say 100% for certain. So
sure.
I will find out for you.
I see in the settings, randomized questions, randomized answers.
And that would be for, so randomized answered would be for multiple choice questions. And then
Okay.
randomized questions would be for the order that they're seeing them in.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
Okay, I've made a note here. Like I said, I would assume
Okay.
it would give them a new 5 from that pool of 10,
Mhm. Right.
but I don't want to tell you 100% that that's how it's going to work. So I'll find
Sure.
out for you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Folks, what other questions do we have with building tests, building settings, adjusting settings? Again, I kind of just showed you the basics because everyone kind of uses these differently, right? Everyone has their own question types they like to use. Everyone has a specific, assessments that they're going to use. So I didn't want to dive too deep, but I wanted to show you the basics and allow for any follow-up questions. So anything else that I can show for you before we take this as a student? So we have built our test, we've adjusted our settings. It's time for the students to take our test. So let's go ahead and walk through that process. So as a student, I'm going to go ahead, first I'm going to jump into student preview mode. Ron, I'm going to go ahead and address your question once we grade this assessment, okay?
No problem.
All right, so I am in my course as a student. It is Sunday night at 11:50. My test is due in 9 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and take my test. So let's go ahead and jump into this midterm here. Once the students select the test, they're kind of given a nice preview before they actually jump into the test. So they'll see the due date, how much time they have, if there's a time limit, how many attempts they have, how many points, kind of just a basic overview of the details of the test. Then we'll go ahead in the lower right corner and select Start Test. You can see we have a timer set up. And now I am put into my assessment. Now, depending on any of those presentation settings that you set up as the instructor, maybe they're only going to see one question at a time. We didn't do that here, so we're going to see all the questions at once. I think that feature is great for specific scenarios. We'll see the point values. We'll see our time remaining. And at the very bottom, we'll see a question filter. So I really like this that they added in. I can see all the questions. I can quickly navigate to the unanswered questions, or I can quickly navigate to just my essay question. So really gives the student some flexibility with how they're taking this. So as a student, I'm just going to go ahead and begin answering some of these questions. You'll notice for an essay question, we'll have this editor toolbar here that you as an instructor have seen throughout Ultra. Our students will have that same toolbar. And we'll simply go ahead and answer those true-false questions. This example here is a matching question, so I can go ahead and answer that. And multiple choice. So I'm going to go ahead and select Submit in the lower right corner. And I am notified that I did not answer one of the questions. So I can see that I didn't answer question 7. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel and actually answer question 7, because if I select submit, I'm not going to be able to go back. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and now select submit. And I really like this screen that pops up for the students. This is going to be their submission confirmation. So they will receive this when they submit their test or when they submit an assignment, if you have any assignments set up in your course. This basically lets them know the date and time that they submitted that, again, test or assignment. They can download this to have it for their records, or they will also get an email. So this is what the email looks like for students. It just lets them know here's the course, their assessment was submitted, and it gives them all that detailed information. I like to tell students to keep this because you never know what can happen with technology. This is also helpful for you because we always, especially in our office, we come across students that say they submitted things, but if we don't have that confirmation, then we of course can't locate it. So that's super important. So as a student, I am done taking my midterm. Any questions with that student process? Again, I just wanted to show you what that looked like. You can do that as well within your courses by using that student preview mode. I highly recommend it. It just gives you kind of a nice confirmation that everything is set up correctly and it's functioning the way that you intend it to. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears back to our instructor hat and let's grade the test that was just submitted. All right, the due date has come and gone. Our students have taken our assessment, hopefully all of them. We're now ready to come in here and grade our assessment. Now, we only really need to do this if we have questions in our assessment that need manually graded. So if your assessment is just multiple choice questions, true, false questions, any questions that you set up a correct answer to, Blackboard will automatically grade it for you. Now, we did have some essay questions in there, so we are going to have to go into that assessment and manually grade those. Everything else will be graded for me. So I'm in my course here. We're going to head over to the grade book, which is at the very top navigation bar. Over on the left-hand side, I'm going to see all the students in my course. Across the top, all the way down to the right, I'm going to see all the assessment items that I've created in this course. I'm going to scroll all the way down to my midterm here, and I can see I have one new submission. This was that student preview mode that we went ahead and entered in. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Stephanie's new submission and view. So this is going to put you into this, what Blackboard is calling a flexible grading interface. Over on the left-hand side, you would see a list of all of your students. We only have one student that submitted the test so far, so we only see our Stephanie Adams preview user over there. In the center of the screen, you're going to see all of the questions and answers that Stephanie submitted. And on the right-hand side, if I expand that panel, that's going to be my feedback panel. I can provide overall feedback to Stephanie for the entire assessment. Taking it back to the left side, again, we're only seeing the test for Stephanie. I do want to point out this question tab at the top. This question tab is really beneficial when you're grading essay type questions. So you can actually go through every single student and answer essay question or grade essay question number 1. So if you wanted to grade all the essay questions at once for every single student, this is the workflow that you would use, as opposed to that students tab where you're going to see all of Stephanie's responses. So notice some of our questions are already graded for us. Again, if we set up a correct answer, Blackboard went ahead and graded that for us. We can kind of confirm that everything looks good. I'm going to come up here and say, you know what, this true false question wasn't really a fair question. I'm going through and grading and everyone's getting it wrong. And I'm deciding, you know what, I didn't word it in the best possible way. So for that particular question, over on the right-hand side, we're going to choose edit/regrade. A couple options here. I can make it extra credit. So it would be basically if they got it right, they would get a 1 point out of 0. I can give full credit to everybody. So if I just want to kind of throw out the question and give everybody points for it, I could do that as well. Or I can adjust the correct answer and select save. There we go. So let's go ahead, and here was my essay question. Here is the student's answer, top-notch answer if you ask me. Over on the right-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and grade this. We're going to give her a 5. And you can actually add individual feedback per question. So not only can we give the student overall feedback for the entire assessment, but I can give them feedback just on this essay question. Another essay question here, student response. We'll go ahead and give them a 0.5 point for that. And I believe we got one more to grade. Once everything has been graded, you'll notice in the upper right corner is going to be the final overall grade for this test out of the total points. Now, if I had additional students in my course that have submitted the test, over on the left here, I can simply navigate to the next student. Of course, we just have Stephanie here who submitted the test, but I could simply go to the next student, manually grade those essay questions, and continue on to the next student. I'm going to use the X in the upper left corner to close out of this flexible grading view. That brings us right back to our grade book. And you can see all the way on the right under our midterm, Stephanie's grade has been posted. So again, the due date has come and gone. Students have taken my assessment. I'm ready to grade those manual questions or just double check my auto graded questions. We're going to head to the grade book from the top navigation. We're going to locate our assessment. There's our midterm here. If we have new students that have made submissions since the last time I came here, we would see new submission in the field. Simply click that and choose view. Again, we're going to enter into this flexible grading window, and it's flexible grading because I can choose to grade an entire student at one time, or I can flip over to that questions tab and choose to grade all essay question number 1 at one time, and then move on to question 2 and grade all question 2 for every student. This is really great if you have essay questions because you can do all the essay questions for each student at once. Once you've made those adjustments to the grade, adjustments to maybe some of your answers, we provided feedback to our student per question. We can also provide overall feedback. We can see their score calculates for us in the upper right corner. We can close out of the flexible grading window in the upper left corner, and it brings us right back to our grade book. Folks, I'm going to pause here. This is another one of those workflows that, just depending on your assessment, is going to be a little bit different for everybody. So just wanted to show you kind of that basic workflow. What questions do we have about grading a test, grading essay type questions, or navigating that flexible grading screen? All right, the last thing I did want to mention, and I did already mention it when a question came up, I showed you how to build your tests from scratch, but I'm sure a lot of you have your questions in a format that looks maybe very similar to this. Maybe you have them built out in a Word document. Maybe your publisher has given you a Word document with the questions. As long as you indicate to us the correct answer for these questions, we can go ahead and very quickly import this into your course for you. This saves you a lot of time. Instead of manually typing in this information, We use kind of a test generator, external website to get all of these questions in the correct format to easily import into your course. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can email our department you can see some of the information here, where you want the quiz to be located, a specific module or place in the course, the questions, the answers, the correct answer. I did show you how to set up all of those test settings, but if that's something that you want us to do for you as well, such as setting up, randomizing the questions and answers, setting up a timer, that's something we can do as well for you if you provide us with that information. Heading back to our training objectives, just want to recap for everybody real quick. We created a test with a couple different question types. We adjusted those test settings. We then went ahead and took the test as a student, and then we graded the test as an instructor. I want to go ahead and thank everyone for joining this afternoon. Like I said, I see a lot of familiar names. If you haven't worked with me, I'm sure you've worked with one of my wonderful colleagues. If you did want to take advantage of our service where we can import your test questions for you, you can go ahead and email that main email. That's going to be iddc@ysu.edu. You can also see our phone number there, or you can go ahead and visit us at Cafaro Hall, formerly the Lincoln Building, and we can go ahead and help you out. Again, today was really just to show you the basics of building a test. There's so much you can do in Ultra in terms of your assessments, in terms of being creative with presentation and question types. Let us know how we can help in the future. If there are any other questions, I will go ahead and hang tight. If not, everyone enjoy this now sunny day, and hopefully we see you in one of our other sessions the rest of the week. Thank you.